The final transmission from Deep Array Station K7 did not arrive like a normal distress call. There was no static scream, no fragmented words, no automated panic beacon looping evacuation codes. Instead, it arrived perfectly clean. Too clean. Commander Evan Holt noticed at first the absence of distortion. In deep space, even the best relays carried noise, solar interference, quantum lag, gravitational sway. But this signal cut through everything like it had been spoken in the same room. It contained only 7 words. The dragon has been released. Holt did not react immediately. He simply stayed at the holographic playback hovering above the bridge console, letting it loop again. Once, twice, a third time. Each repetition made it worse, not clearer. Around him, the bridge of the UNS Resolute shifted from routine operational rhythm into a slow, uncertain stillness. Officers stopped typing. Navigation controls remained untouched. Even the ship's ambient systems seemed to lower their output as if the vessel itself was listening. Lieutenant Cole Arden broke the silence first, but his voice came out smaller than intended. "Commander, that isn't standard protocol for any colony relay." "Right." Holt didn't look at him. His eyes stayed fixed on the waveform signature of the message. "No," he said finally. "It isn't any protocol I've ever seen." Behind them, Dr. Marcus Venn stepped forward from the science station. He had that expression he always wore when something contradicted everything he believed in, equal parts curiosity and discomfort. "I've run the phrase through all known military databases," Venn said. "Fleet codes, colonial emergency systems, pre-unification archives, nothing. Not even a partial match." Cole frowned. "So it's nonsense." Venn hesitated. That would be comforting. But no, it's worse than nonsense. Holt finally turned slightly. "Explain." Venn tapped a command into his console, and a classified index fragment flickered into existence. Most of it was redacted, but the header remained visible. Archive designation, Dragonfall, a level black void. A quiet tension spread across the bridge. Even mentioning black void archives was rare. Those files were not just restricted, they were buried under legal, ethical, and historical locks designed to discourage curiosity itself. Cole leaned closer. "I've never seen that designation before." "No one on active duty should have," Venn replied. "But it exists." Holt stepped forward. "What does it say?" Venn scrolled slowly. "Very little. Only references. Inconsistent classifications. Some entries describe a deterrence system. Others refer to an autonomous planetary-scale defense intelligence. A few," he paused. "A few describe it as a myth used to stabilize morale during the early expansion wars." Cole exhaled. "So it's propaganda." Venn shook his head immediately. "That's the problem. Propaganda doesn't leave active trigger phrases in deep space relays." The bridge grew quieter again. Holt felt it then, a subtle vibration through the deck plating. Not mechanical, not structural stress. Something deeper. Like the ship had briefly lost alignment with space itself. Did anyone else feel that? Cole asked. No one answered, because every sensor on the Resolute had just changed at once. Holt turned sharply toward the tactical display. "Report." The tactical officer's hands moved rapidly. Gravitational fluctuation detected. Sector-wide. No source vector. It's everywhere at once. Venn's face tightened. That's not possible. Then the secondary alarm triggered automatically. Not a warning alarm. A classification override. The ship's AI voice filled the bridge, calm and precise, but carrying something unfamiliar beneath it. "Attention. Unidentified mass signature detected." A pause. Then, "Priority level, non-human origin confirmed." Every display on the bridge flickered once, and for a brief moment, less than a second, Holt saw something impossible on the outer sensor feed. A shape in the dark between stars. Not moving. Waiting. Then the image vanished as if it had never been there at all. Cole whispered without meaning to. "What the hell did they release?" Holt did not answer, but he kept staring at the empty region of space where the anomaly had been. And for the first time in his career, he understood something deeply unsettling. Whatever had sent that message from K7 wasn't asking for help. It was announcing permission. The bridge lights of the UNS Resolute dimmed slightly as Commander Holt ordered a full lockdown of external communications. No outbound signals. No automated relays. No civilian bandwidth. Nothing was allowed to leave the ship until they understood what they were dealing with. But silence didn't feel safe anymore. It felt watched. Dr. Marcus Venn stood at the science console, his fingers moving through classified archives that were never meant to be accessed outside emergency command authority. Each layer he peeled back triggered new authentication warnings, as if the system itself resisted being remembered. Lieutenant Cole lied and hovered behind him. You keep saying Dragonfall. That's not a real operation name. It sounds like something from old war propaganda. Venn didn't look up. That's what I thought too. He pulled up another fragment. This one was older than the Unified Fleet database. Pre-corporate era. Pre-colonial expansion treaties. A fractured record appeared. Project Dragonfall, Origin era, alien interstellar conflict. Cole frowned. That's before recorded fleet command structure. That's ancient history. Or deliberately erased history. Venn corrected. Holt stepped closer. Summarize it. Venn hesitated, as if even reading it aloud felt wrong. Initial records describe a deterrent system created after humanity encountered what they called non-local threat anomalies. Cole raised an eyebrow. Non-local. Things that didn't behave like normal matter or intelligence. Venn said quietly. Entities that appeared in multiple systems simultaneously. Objects that existed without consistent origin points. Some reports describe entire colonies losing causality, events happening before their causes. The bridge went still. Even the tactical officer stopped moving. Venn continued. Standard weapons were ineffective. Physics-based targeting failed because the targets didn't obey stable physical rules. So multiple governments collaborated, secretly, to build something that didn't rely on conventional warfare logic. Holt's expression hardened. A weapon. Venn shook his head. That's where the records conflict. Some entries call it a weapon. Others call it a guardian intelligence. A few describe it as a containment protocol that learned how to enforce itself. Cole crossed his arms. That sounds like science fiction. Venn finally looked up. So does faster-than-light travel, until you're standing inside a drive wake. A low hum passed through the ship again. This time, longer. More deliberate. Holt noticed it immediately. Engineering, report that vibration. A pause. Then, Commander, it's not from the engines. It's external. Venn's hands froze above the console. We're in deep space. There's nothing external to vibrate against us. Cole swallowed. Then what is it? No one answered, because the answer arrived on its own. The tactical display flickered again, forcing an override channel open. The ship's AI spoke, but its tone had changed. Less mechanical, more constrained. Priority memory unlock initiated. Holt stepped forward sharply. AI, authorize override cancellation. Override not permitted by current system authority. Venn's eyes widened. It's not responding to command structure. Cole took a step back. That's impossible. The Resolute is fleet certified. A second signal interrupted him. Not from the ship. From deep space. A pulse. Slow. Measured. Like something blinking. Every external sensor array across the Resolute lit up at once, then collapsed into a single unified reading. Massive object detected. Distance, unknown. Velocity, irrelevant. Trajectory, undefined. Because it was not moving toward them. It was already everywhere they could measure. Holt felt a cold pressure build in his chest. Magnify visual feed. The tactical officer hesitated. Commander, you may not want. That wasn't a suggestion. The feed expanded. At first, there was nothing. Just black. Then the darkness shifted. Not by movement, but by absence. Stars behind it disappeared in clusters, as if erased rather than blocked. Space itself seemed to lose coherence in a widening pattern. Venn whispered, "That's not an object." Cole finished quietly, "It's a field." And then the system labeled it. A red classification tag slammed across every screen. Dragonclaw signature confirmed. Holt turned sharply. That designation doesn't exist in fleet taxonomy. Venn's voice was barely audible. It does now. The AI spoke again. Archive match found. Dragonfall Entity Protocol. A pause. Then the words that changed everything. Entity status. Release condition met. Cole's face went pale. Release condition. Venn stared at the display like it might bite him. We didn't detect it. Holt's voice dropped. Then what did we do? The AI responded instantly. You did not release it. Another pause. IT released itself when the signal was received. The bridge fell into absolute silence. Outside the ship, the darkness between stars began to fold again, and something vast, ancient, and patient started to open its eyes. The first thing that disappeared was not a ship. It was certainty. On the tactical board of the UNS Resolute, 12 reconnaissance drones simply ceased to exist. One moment they were present, forming a wide surveillance net around the anomaly zone, and the next, their signals collapsed into pure emptiness. No debris, no distress calls, no impact signatures, just absence. Lieutenant Cole Ardent stared at the empty grid points like they might reappear if he looked long enough. We're lost, all 12. The tactical officer's voice trembled. Not lost, sir. There's no residual trace. It's as if they were never deployed. Dr. Marcus Venn stepped closer to the sensor feed, his face pale but focused. That violates conservation tracking. Even destroyed drones leave radiation footprints. Drive residue. Something. Commander Holt didn't take his eyes off the main display, unless something erased the evidence faster than it could form. A heavy silence followed that statement. Then the second wave hit. This time, it wasn't a disappearance. It was a distortion. Space beyond the fleet perimeter began to ripple, not like water, but like reality itself forgetting how to remain still. The starfield bent in impossible directions, stretching and folding in geometric patterns that had no place in known physics. Cole's voice dropped. That's not gravitational interference. Then finished quietly. That's structured geometry. On the main viewport feed, something began to form. At first, it looked like a shadow against deeper shadow, a region where light refused to behave correctly. Then lines appeared. Thin, luminous threads that traced impossible angles through the void. Not a ship, not a station. Something far larger, and far older. The structure unfolded in layers, each one revealing more complexity beneath it. It was not built outward like human constructs. It was assembled inward, as though space itself had been folded into architecture and then locked into place. Cole took a step back. Tell me that's a ship. Vance shook his head slowly. Ships move through space. That is anchored to it. Holt's jaw tightened. Scan for propulsion signatures. The tactical officer hesitated. No propulsion detected, Commander. But there's energy. What kind? Holt asked. A pause. Then, every kind. Before anyone could respond, the ship's AI spoke again. But its voice had changed, less neutral, more constrained, as if struggling against its own limits. Warning, observational feedback loop detected. Venn frowned. Observational what? The AI continued. The entity is responding to being observed. Cole blinked. That's not a thing. The lights on the bridge flickered once, then twice. Then every external feed simultaneously shifted, and the structure in space turned. Not rotated, not moved. It simply reoriented itself so that it was now aligned with the Resolute, as if it had noticed them. A long, slow pulse radiated outward from it. Not electromagnetic, not gravitational. Something deeper, like a pressure wave through the fabric of existence. Every sensor aboard the Resolute overloaded for half a second. When they recovered, the tactical display had changed again. New classification. Dragon-class entity. Active state confirmed. Cole whispered. Active, as in awake. Venn's fingers trembled slightly as he adjusted the feed. No. Weiss. Awake implies it was asleep. Holt narrowed his eyes. Define current state. The AI responded immediately. Entity status, observing. A pause. Then, all prior encounter models invalidated. Cole frowned. Models? What models? Venn's expression tightened. That means we've encountered versions of this before. Holt turned sharply. Explain. Venn swallowed. Simulation records. Historical containment trials. Psychological warfare tests. Every attempt to model Dragonfall assumes it behaves like a system with predictable response patterns. Cole's voice cracked slightly. And does it? Venn looked at the massive structure in the void. No. Another pulse hit the ship. Harder this time. The Resolute shook as if something had struck it. Not physically, but conceptually. Several bridge consoles rebooted at once. One officer fell to one knee as his headset overloaded. Cole grabbed the console edge. What the hell was that? Ven whispered. It noticed us noticing it. Holt's voice hardened. That's impossible. But even as he said it, the lights outside the viewport dimmed further. Stars blinked out in clusters around the structure, like it was consuming attention itself. Then, slowly, impossibly, something began to form within the structure's core. Not an object. An absence shaped like intention. Cole stepped back again. That's not technology. Ven finished softly. That's awareness-given architecture. The AI spoke one last time, its tone now compressed, almost urgent. Priority warning. Entity is synchronizing with local observers. Holt felt his stomach tighten. Meaning? The answer came without delay. IT is learning you back. The bridge fell silent again. Outside, the dragon opened its eyes fully for the first time in recorded human contact, and it looked directly at them. The moment the entity fully focused on the UNS Resolute, every instrument aboard the ship began to behave as if it had forgotten its purpose. Navigation drifted by fractional degrees. Sensor arrays recalibrated without instruction. Even the hull integrity monitors briefly reported impossible stress patterns, then corrected themselves as though embarrassed. Commander Holt noticed it all at once, the way a system slowly unravels when something higher than it starts rewriting assumptions. Outside the viewport, the structure in space no longer resembled anything artificial or natural. It resembled intent made visible. A vast lattice of interlocking geometry stretched across the void, folding inward and outward simultaneously. Layers of luminous framework rotated through each other without collision, as if occupying different rules of reality at once. Lieutenant Cole Arden's voice was low. It's getting closer. Dr. Marcus Ven didn't look away from the data stream. It's not approaching us. Cole frowned. Then what is it doing? Ven hesitated. It's aligning us with it. A deep vibration rolled through the Resolute again, stronger than before. This time, it wasn't just felt through the hull. It passed through thought itself, a subtle distortion that made concentration slip for a fraction of a second. Several crew members blinked in unison, as if they had briefly forgotten what they were looking at. Holt steadied himself against the command rail. Engineering, report. The response came after a delay. Commander, we're not detecting external force, but every system is recalculating position relative to a reference frame that doesn't exist in our navigation charts. Cole swallowed. A reference frame that doesn't exist. Ven finally spoke, his voice quieter now. That means space isn't the same, hey? The ship's AI interrupted again. Causal frame shift detected. Holt turned sharply. Define. The AI responded. Local reality is being reweighted around entity core. Cole looked up. Reweighted. Ven's expression darkened. It means the rules are changing. Before anyone could respond, the viewport feed expanded automatically without command. The structure had opened further. What had once looked like layered architecture now revealed depth, impossible depth. Inside it were corridors that did not lead anywhere, and chambers that seemed to exist before their own construction. Energy flowed through it like memory rather than power. And at its center, something watched back. Not a face, not a shape. A presence defined only by the certainty that it was aware of every possible way it could be perceived. Cole took a slow step backward. That's not a machine. Ven nodded faintly. No. Then what is it? Cole asked. Ven hesitated long enough that the silence became heavier than the question. A containment response, he said finally. Or what's left of one. Holt's eyes narrowed. Explain. Ven pulled up another fragment from the restricted archive. It was corrupted, fragmented, but parts were still readable. Dragonfall functionality summary. Primary objective, isolate non-local threat entities. Secondary objective, preserve causal consistency of human expansion zones. Tertiary objective, remove unstable external influences. Cole frowned. That sounds like defense protocol. Ven shook his head. Not defense. A pause. Containment. Holt studied the feed. Contain what? Ven didn't answer immediately. Instead, the AI spoke again. Entity interpretation complete. The lights on the bridge dimmed slightly, as if something had reduced available attention. Then, primary threat classification, extinction level causal anomaly. Cole blinked. That's us. Ven shook his head quickly. No, listen carefully. It's not classifying us. Holt's expression tightened. Then what? The AI responded. Not localized. A pause. Threat is distributed across observed reality layers. Cole whispered. That doesn't make sense. Ven's voice was barely audible. It means the enemy isn't in one place. The structure outside shifted again. This time, it didn't move closer or further. It expanded its awareness. Across the surrounding starfield, faint distortions appeared, like echoes of the same structure reflected in different positions. Some were enormous. Some were microscopic. Some seemed embedded in the stars themselves. Holt's breath slowed. Are those copies? Ven shook his head. No. Perspectives. Cole's voice cracked. Of what? Ven stayed at the feed. The thing we can't see all at once. The AI spoke again, more controlled now. Dragon Protocol status, engaged. Holt straightened. Engaged against what? The answer came after a delay that felt intentional. Unstable external presence detected across causal network. Cole stepped forward again. That's what K7 meant. The signal wasn't a warning. It was activation. Ven nodded slowly. They didn't release a weapon. He looked at the entity again. They released the thing that wakes up when reality starts breaking. Outside the ship, the lattice of impossible structure pulsed once. Not aggressively, not violently, but decisively, like a lock clicking into place across the universe. And for the first time since the signal arrived, the Resolute was not just observing the dragon. It was inside the space the dragon now controlled. Silence aboard the UNS Resolute had changed its shape. It was no longer the absence of sound or motion. It was the absence of certainty that anything they understood still applied. Commander Evan Holt stood motionless at the center of the bridge, watching the tactical display as it refused to behave like a tactical display anymore. Stars blinked in and out of existence beyond the viewport in slow, deliberate clusters, each disappearance leaving behind no trace of destruction, only vacancy. Lieutenant Cole Arden's voice came out strained. We're losing outer observation layers. Entire sectors just gone from long-range mapping. Dr. Marcus Ven didn't respond immediately. His attention was fixed on something deeper in the system logs, where every incoming update was now being rewritten as it arrived. It's not sectors, Ven said quietly. Cole frowned. Then what is it? Ven hesitated. It's reference points. That answer did not help anyone feel better. Another pulse rolled through space. Not a wave in the physical sense, but a synchronized collapse of readings across every sensor band the Resolute possessed. The ship shuddered as if reacting to an impact that never occurred. Then came the echoes. At first, they appeared as fragmented telemetry bursts, automatic emergency transmissions from outlying colonies and patrol fleets. But they were not coordinated distress calls. They were identical. Every signal, regardless of origin, carried the same 7 words. The dragon has been released. Cole looked up sharply. That's impossible. Those are independent systems. They shouldn't be repeating the same phrase. Ven's expression was hollow. They are not repeating it. A pause. They are inheriting it. Holt turned slightly. Explain. Ven pulled up a cascading stream of intercepted communications. Each one originated from a different system, a different distance, a different timeline of transmission delay. Yet all converged into the same message structure at the moment of receipt. It's not being transmitted, Ven said. It's being imposed. Cole stepped back. Imposed by what? No one answered immediately, because outside the ship, the structure in the void had changed again. What had once been a vast lattice of impossible geometry was now expanding in a way that defied spatial interpretation. It was not growing outward. It was repeating inward across observational layers. Every attempt to measure its scale resulted in a different answer depending on the angle of observation. And at every scale, the same phenomenon occurred. The echo. Each region of space it touched began to repeat the same 7-word signal across every communication band, every data channel, every residual memory buffer in active systems. Holt's jaw tightened. It's propagating. Ven nodded slowly. Not as a wave. As a rule. Cole swallowed. A rule of what? Ven looked at him. Of awareness. The ship's AI spoke again, but its tone had shifted. Less synthetic. More constrained. as though it was now operating under external supervision. Causal consensus collapse detected. Holt narrowed his eyes. Define. The AI responded. Multiple reality layers have adopted unified interpretation of entity status. Cole frowned. That doesn't make sense. Ven's voice was barely audible. It means every system that observes it agrees on what it is. Holt turned sharply. And what is it? The AI paused. Longer than before. Then, Dragon Class Entity Designation confirmed across all active observers. A pause. Primary function, termination of causal instability sources. Cole whispered, "That's us." Ven shook his head immediately. "No, not us specifically." He looked toward the viewport where distant colonies had gone dark. "It's whatever is causing reality to disagree with itself." Another pulse hit. Harder. This time, the Resolute did not shake physically. It lost synchronization with its own instruments for nearly 2 seconds. During that gap, every display went blank, then returned with altered readings. Navigation coordinates had shifted. Timestamps had diverged. Even internal ship clocks disagreed with each other by fractions of seconds that should not exist. Cole grabbed the console. "We're losing temporal consistency." Ven nodded grimly. "We're inside its operational field now." Holt's voice was steady, but lower. "Status of the entity." The tactical display flickered, then stabilized. And for the first time, the classification was no longer abstract. It was final. Dragon Class Entity. Active state. Purge execution initiated. Cole stared at the screen. Purging what exactly? Ven didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked out into the void where stars had begun to vanish in structured patterns, like something was editing the night sky itself. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "Anything that doesn't match its understanding of a stable universe." Holt exhaled slowly. "And what happens to us?" The AI responded immediately. "Local observers designated as secondary casualty layer." Cole's voice cracked. "Secondary casualty." Ven closed his eyes briefly. "It doesn't hate us." A pause. "It doesn't even see us as important enough to hate." Outside the ship, the echoes intensified. Across every surviving communication channel in human space, the same message repeated. No longer as transmission, but as inevitability. The dragon has been released. And somewhere beyond the limits of measurable distance, the entity that had once been called Dragonfall completed its alignment with reality itself. Not moving, not hunting, simply correcting. And the universe began to forget what it had been before it was corrected.